Hello there and welcome. In the previous episode, we dealt with spawning our player. So we have these checkpoints, and basically each time the player dies, he appears in the registered checkpoint. We also dealt with the death of the player. And in this episode, we want to do something that is also related to spawning, but this time spawning of enemies. Because at this point, we need to manually place our different animals in the scene. For example, this bear over here. If we double click on it. And we don't really want to do this. We don't want to start dragging all the different animals and fill up this entire world. And it's not just about placement of animals at the start of the game. We also want sometimes that if we kill an animal, it will respawn after some time, or maybe an enemy. And this is not just relevant for survival games, it happens in any kind of game. You have a bunch of enemies, you kill them, and after some time you come back and they respawn. And I also want to give you this option, especially when we talk about animals, because in a survival game, you want to be able to gather more loot, you want to be gathering materials. So if we kill all the animals and they will never respawn, then the player will have no way to gather more resources. So for creating this kind of animal or enemy spawner, we're first going to access our bear animal script. And if you have an enemy, simply name this enemy, right? This is just specific for animals, and you can make this into creatures, NPCs, whatever you want. Now we're going to create an event that will be triggered when the enemy is dead. Of course, when the enemy is dead, we have this on destroy method that is being called, but it's not enough that the script itself knows what to do. We need to inform other components as well. For example, our respawner, because the respawner needs to know if the animal is dead and if it should be respawned. So we're going to create this new event over here. Public event action on destroyed. And we are going to invoke it inside the on destroyed. Now this may be a bit weird, but this is just a way to make sure that other subscribers to this event can know that the animal is actually dead. So when he's dead and destroyed, it's going to trigger this event, and now we can subscribe to this event in different places in our code. So now that we have this, we're going to save the animal script, and we're going to create a new game object. It's going to be, let's say, a sphere. We're going to place it somewhere random, and we're going to make it invisible. So we're going to remove the mesh renderer, and then we're going to rename it to spawner. Now you can be specific, you can say bear spawner and simply change the different animals, and then you can, well, let's just name it bear spawner. And the reason we're naming it with a specific animal instead of just naming it spawner is because you will eventually make this into a prefab as well. And then you should basically use these spawners as prefabs and not the actual animals. So if you want a bear to appear over here, you just use this bear spawner and not the actual bear. So we're going to name it bear spawner. And now we need to add some kind of script to it. So the script will be named enemy spawner. Now again, I play around with these names, enemy, animal. You can name whatever you want. This is an enemy spawner because we want it to be a bit more generic. You can name it animal spawner, but then if you have also enemies in your game, then it's going to be confusing. So just name it something very general. I'm going to name it enemy spawner, or NPC spawner, or animal spawner. It doesn't really matter. So we're going to drag this enemy spawner on our bear spawner, and inside we're going to start writing the script. First of all, we want to have a few members, so serialized field, private game object. It's going to be the enemy prefab. Again, this can be an animal, an enemy, an NPC, whatever. And then we also want to have a private float that will be the respawn delay. And we're going to set it for now to 10 seconds. Obviously, in your final game, you should set it something higher. Maybe you want to wait 5 minutes until the enemy is respawned. Maybe you want to wait for some kind of event to happen before you spawn the enemy. Maybe you want to wait a full day. It really depends on you. We also want to have a private game object that will be a reference to the current enemy. Now we're going to have a start method, and inside we're going to call the spawn enemy, and this will be the first spawn of the game. So if you want to have a bear over here, you simply drag this bear spawner prefab, and when you first start the game, it will spawn the first bear, and then it's going to basically wait until the bear is dead, and wait this delay, and only then spawn another bear. So let's generate this method. Inside, we're going to check if the prefab is not null. Enemy prefab. If it's null, basically, we want to give some kind of error because maybe we forgot to set the reference log, let's say warning. Enemy prefab is not assigned in the enemy spawner. Okay, this is just if we have a bunch of spawners and we forget to place. Let's also return, so it will basically exit this method and it will not continue because we have nothing to do if we don't have this prefab. Then we're going to set the current enemy to be the enemy that we instantiate. So instantiate enemy prefab, but we also want to set the position to be transform position and transform rotation. And then we also want to set the current enemy and get the actual animal component. And inside we want to subscribe to this on destroyed event. Handle enemy destroyed, or handle enemy death, or handle on enemy death. Okay, and now we can generate this method as well. We can simply say private void. So what we basically do, we spawn an enemy, okay? And we use this prefab that will be our bear prefab. It will spawn the enemy in this position, in the position of the spawner. Then it's going to keep a reference to this enemy over here. And then we're going to basically get this animal script, this onDestroyed event, and we're going to subscribe to it. Then when this event is triggered, we're going to do something. So when the animal is dead, we're going to trigger this method. And inside this method, we're going to set the current enemy, get animal script again, onDestroyed, and this time we want to unsubscribe, right? Because when he's dead, we want to unsubscribe from this event. And we also set the current enemy to be null. And this is the important part. We want to respawn our enemy. So we're going to use the invoke method because with the invoke method, we can simply provide the method that we want to invoke, but also a delay. Now, of course, you can create a coroutine and then have some kind of wait for a certain amount of seconds and only then spawn the enemy. But we can use this invoke and we're going to say spawn enemy, and the delay will be the respawn delay. Now, this is not the way we use it because it needs to be a string, right? We need to give the name of this method, the spawn enemy method, But another trick that you can do is instead of turning this into a string, you can simply say name of this method, but it will basically convert it into a string. So it's very straightforward. It will then wait for this delay and it will generate a new enemy. It will do it all over. So this is some kind of loop. Now, if you're wondering why are we having a reference to this enemy, what if we get another enemy and then it will lose the reference? No, this will never happen because this enemy spawner will only have one enemy, right? Each spawner has its own enemy, and if you want to have multiple enemies, you should just create more spawners. Obviously, maybe you want to create some kind of zombie spawner that spawns a wave of zombies. If you want something like that, you can look into my FPS tutorial. At the end, somewhere at the last episodes of this tutorial series, we created a zombie spawner. So I show you how to create multiple amounts of enemies spawning at the same time or one after the other. I don't know if it's going to work with the logic of this game, but this is if you want to have multiple like swarms of enemies. This spawner is only for one specific enemy, so this reference will always be connected to this specific animal. Of course, you can do something crazier. For example, you can take this spawner and let's just make sure that everything is saved. Let's click on the bear spawner. Let's make sure first that everything is saved. We click on the bear spawner and now we need to add the prefab. So we have the bear prefab. Let's just make sure that everything is saved over here. We click on overrides, apply all. So all the changes we made are saved. We're going to delete this prefab and we're going to drag the actual prefab. Where is it? Animals. This prefab, we're going to drag it into the bear spawner and we're going to decide on a delay. Obviously, other enemies will have other respawn times. Now that we have this, we can simply take it and make it into a prefab. Now you can have a bear spawner, or you can simply duplicate this, unpack it, and rename this to snake spawner. And then simply replace the prefab with a snake prefab or any other enemy or animal. You can also change the delay. So this will be a snake spawner, and you can also add this as a prefab. So if you want to have some snakes over here, you simply drag some snakes over here, some bear spawners, and then you will have these spawners in this spot. And if you kill a bear, after a certain amount of time, it will respawn it over here. It will respawn the snakes over here. So this is the way we work with these spawners. For now, we don't have snakes, so we only have this bear, and we have this bear spawner. Now, I told you that if you want to have multiple enemies, you can check out the FPS tutorial, but you can also take this bear spawner, and let's just make this enabled so we can see the actual location. You can take this. I think that we should also disable the sphere collider, otherwise the bear will appear and get stuck. So we don't really need this sphere collider, right? Let's just disable it or remove it. But we can simply take and duplicate this bear spawner and then take all of these and place them into a parent object. Bear, let's name this bear horde, and drag all of them inside. And then we simply make this bear horde into a prefab. So next time you don't need to start adding more spawners. You can simply add this bear horde and it will add 3 different bear spawners together. Now this will be really a matter of choice because then they will all spawn together, and usually you want to have bears a bit separated because these are not common enemies. But if you want to have like zombies or skeletons or whatever, you can do this trick. We don't want this, so we're going to simply take this bear horde and delete it, but we're going to have these bear spawners, And where is it? Over here. Snake spawner, bear spawner. I want this to be visible, otherwise it's a bit confusing. So make sure it's above the ground, but not underground and not in the air, somewhere over here. A good spot will be where the bear is. So if we drag the bear, it's somewhere 0.4. Okay, so let's just make the spawn at the same point, 0.5, something like that. And now we can save this as well. And we can add this spawner over here. And now let's see if it works. Let's again disable the collider and disable the mesh render. Let's save the prefab again. And let's start the game. Now we can see that the bear was spawned over there. And if we kill this bear, it will spawn over here. Now we can make it to chase us. No. We're too fast. If we kill him over here, he will respawn over there. So let's just... Good job. Sleep well. And now the bear was destroyed. And now there is this timer of 10 seconds. And in a few seconds, he will respawn. And now we can see the bear respawning here again. So obviously 10 seconds may be too low, but you can, where's the bear spawner? You can set it to be 30 seconds or whatever you want. Maybe if you have some kind of mini boss, you will set it to 10 minutes, right? So maybe 10 minutes or even more. So there should be some kind of cooldown until the enemy appears again. And this is how we create spawners. So this is a rather short episode. I just wanted to make this in one specific episode and not combine it with other things. In the next episode, we are going to start with something that is highly requested. This will be creating a bow and arrow. So it will be rather simple because all we need to do is create an animation and then create some kind of functionality for the bow. But we already have this attacking system, we have our equipping system. It will be simply some item that we can equip. And maybe we also want to add arrows, or maybe it will have infinite arrows, or maybe we can add like an arrow over here and then it will consume these arrows. I still did not decide, but it will basically allow us to equip this bow. Right click and then it will prepare the arrow and then we can release it, or just left click and it will shoot. So this will be our first ranged weapon. Why we have this? Yes, again, this error is just because we probably did a null check. Let's go inside. Enemy spawner. Yeah, we probably are calling this event, although the enemy is dead. Yes, because it's not a good idea to unsubscribe inside of the event, because the event will happen when he's dead, and then it's going to try to call this method before this line over here. So we can try to unsubscribe on destroy, but then again, maybe it will be too late. So let's take this on disable maybe. Let's try on destroy. If this will not work, we will simply do a workaround with a null check. That's it. Okay, so it actually worked. And now we don't have this problem because we basically unsubscribe on destroy. So it calls this method, and only then it will call this thing. As we know, this event is subscribed to the onDestroy of the animal, right? Called when animal is dead, right? Because we subscribe to the onDestroy of the animal. And the problem is that we are not unsubscribing before the animal is dead, and then it's going to try to get this component, although the animal is already dead. But if we place it inside the onDestroy over here, then this will happen before this, and it will basically unsubscribe before the animal is dead, and then it's not going to try to call this event, even though the enemy is dead. So these are small things that you can do just so you don't get these errors, because when we stop the game in Unity, it basically destroys these objects, and then it thinks that we actually killed the animal. So this is not relevant for the real game. It only happens in Unity when we stop the game like this. So that's all for this episode. Thank you for watching. In the next episode, as I told you, we will start with the bow and arrow, and then we are going to continue with more things. If you're still following this series, I just want to thank you, because it's a very long series and not everyone has the capability to stick with one series and one tutorial, but I just wanted to create something really comprehensive that will be on the same project and on the same systems and still show you different possibilities, because usually you find these tutorials and one tutorial shows you how to do this and another tutorial shows you how to do that. But when you start trying to make all of this work together, you get different problems. So I hope that you are enjoying this tutorial. You can share it, you can leave a like, you can subscribe, you can become a member of the channel to support me even more. And I'll see you in the next episode.